It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 414. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Grace.
Hi.
Kodra.
URI too long.
And Tam.
Hello.
So we're still down at Thalen. We're down in Ash, but we're back at Grace.
Yay.
Yay.
Moving is hard.
Moving is terrible, but I am here now.
Woo. So yeah, if anything sounds slightly different, it's because houses changed.
Pretty much.
So,
Welcome back.
Thank you. And I have things to talk about.
Which is good. Which is very good. One of the things that we talked about last week was playing Darktide instead of recording the show, since we didn't record a show. And I think that happened without me because I was not feeling amazing.
A little bit.
What we were able to play. It was not in... I mean, it was in the beta, and it wasn't really complete.
Okay. Do we have any idea when it actually launches?
It has launched now.
Okay.
Like, as of now, it is launched. Pretty solid, mostly solid reviews.
I mean, the game is pretty, it's decently polished.
Yeah. It's missing a few really nice features, which are coming but not in yet, and probably going to stop me from playing too much more of it until they're in.
I thought I read something where smaller than 4 players is coming with AI controlled additional squad mates.
Yes. Yes. Basically, the two things that are missing for me are support for fewer than 4 players and private lobbies.
Private lobbies sounds like a really good idea.
Private lobbies is the thing that I would be like, I don't want to have my parties filled with randos, at least off the bat. So, that's a thing. But otherwise, it's pretty great. It's definitely 40K has had a somewhat long history of just assy games. And I think most of them don't do a good job of capturing the feel of 40K outside of maybe the Dawn of War games. But this one is you're not actually playing any of the 40K factions that you know or are familiar with. You're basically playing Necromunda. And honestly, I'm sort of surprised that they went with the themes that they did and not Necromunda. But it's also you're playing a bunch of legitimately randos who have been kind of screwed over by the Imperium because the Imperium sucks, and are enlisted in basically when things go very badly for you and your ship, the prison ship that you start in, you get enlisted by a enterprising and arguably heretical agent who is you're gonna help us fight the corruption in this hive, in the form of Left 4 Dead style Vermintide, if you're familiar with it, missions against a whole bunch of different basically chaos people. And I mean, it is very obviously, it's made by the same people who made Vermintide. It's very similar to Vermintide. I think that the difficulty curve is smoother than Vermintide, although I've heard that Vermintide 2's difficulty curve has been smoothed out since we last tried it. But yeah, I mean, you've got 4 character classes versus 4 characters in Vermintide, which I think is a huge improvement. 4 character classes, and each one has a unique set of weapons it can equip and just overall abilities and role in the party.
Yeah, I played as the I'm good at using a regular rifle, which was pretty fun. Like it gives you a mode where like it's supposed to highlight high value targets, I think, which is good because like there's a lot of like just squad fights where there's a couple of important guys intermixed with like just a bunch of like basically zombies that run at you trying to melee you.
Yeah.
Similar to Left 4 Dead. There's still an amount of Warhammer, like you're working with the Imperium of Man. Like the people may be doing questionable things from an Imperium perspective, but it's still a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, like it's still 40K. I was actually chatting with Kodra a little bit before the show. I find like it is definitely like, yep, this is the Imperium is a fascist regime and they suck. But like the game doesn't make any bones about that. I think that it's you aren't confused about that. It's super upfront with it versus like Call of Duty.
Yeah, my only problem there is they're also kind of they're kind of portrayed as still the protagonists of this setting.
Yes.
Like it is not a game about fighting against the structures of the Imperium.
This is true.
It's very much a game about you are kind of a servant of this Imperium, and there is definitely like the recruitment video where you're like everyone is chanting like these mantras is really uncomfortable to watch, especially if like these are ostensibly the people whose side you're on and you are working for to take out the bad peoples that you're fighting against. And the bad peoples you're fighting against are definitely bad people. Like they're trying to do all sorts of horrible stuff. It doesn't like make them out to be sympathetic in any way, which I mean, sure. But it still means that if there is a sympathetic people, it's the Nazis you're working for.
Yeah, which again, they don't really make any bones about whether or not these are good people. They're not. They're like expressly not from the jump. So yeah, it definitely is dark in the like you're working for bad people against even worse things.
Well, it always, like, the trailers and stuff always kind of gave it a Suicide Squad kind of feel.
Yes, that's definitely what it's going for. And the characters that you play, they have a really clever system in place that I think is pretty neat. Because you can actually create your character, and rather than so Vermintide has 4 characters, and you choose a character to play as, and the character is tied to the class. So hope you liked that, gender, appearance, etc. for the class you wanted to play. Whereas Darktide has a character creator that lets you customize your appearance in a bunch of ways, which I think is cool. Like choose how you feel like representing yourself, but also as part of that, you select a bunch of what's your character background Mad Libs, which help to determine what voice your character uses in the game and their overall personality, which the game uses for its pretty extensive banter, because the characters will banter with one another during the game.
Yeah.
Which is actually really neat to watch.
Yeah, that is very cool.
And the banter is very like it differs widely by character, to the point where you can have 2 people in the same two people of the same class in the game, and they like argue with each other. Like they have very, very different viewpoints and commentary.
Yes.
But the like combat feels slick. The powers are so Kodra was playing the veteran, which has the like mark targets for you and your allies, plus just good guns, better guns than anybody else gets.
Except maybe the Ogren.
That's fair. Better range, definitely. I was playing the Psyker, who is okay at melee, has kind of terrible guns, but has a third weapon that is my psychic power, which I can use to blow up people's heads, which is both very satisfying and also makes me uniquely good at removing key targets. Maybe not uniquely because other people can snipe them, but it makes me very good at removing key targets, especially like ones that are in cover or otherwise difficult to take down. But also really bad at what's it called? Really bad at like area of effect. So it's neat seeing the different versus like I'm pretty sure the veteran has like grenades, which help a lot as far as blowing up a bunch of zombies.
Yeah, grenades are kind of awkward. Like more just having a zombies don't have a ton of health and just shooting them with bullets is pretty good.
That's fair.
Grenades are really slow.
Yeah, I haven't. We played. I've played like through the intro mission, which basically teaches you all the basics and gives you a grounding on what you are, and what you're doing there. And I've played like 2 missions, and the second of which with Kodra, we got to the end of it, and then something crashed, and we didn't get any credit for any of it. So we're like, well, I think we're done for now until this launches properly and some of these bugs are fixed. But it's the kind of thing that I'm legitimately interested in coming back to later.
Yeah, the other challenge with that one was I'm pretty sure had to play it with randoms.
Yeah, we also did play it with randoms, which I don't love.
Yeah, the little bit I watched was just folks playing with randoms, and they didn't seem too enthused with playing with random players.
Yeah, I'm not that enthused about playing with random players.
Yeah, I mean, you want to play these games with your friends. It's like, or like, yeah, that's just where it's the most fun. It's not like you're getting a lot of personality from the people who you are playing with. There's no real communication that makes it better to play with strangers. Like, there are some environments I don't mind playing with strangers if, like, we're at least like, I realize being forced to communicate is one of the downsides, but at least then, like, maybe they're interesting and maybe we have a conversation. But like, if they're just there to like provide inputs as another game object in the world, I don't understand why they aren't why are they not AIs? Like,
Yeah,
it's
the pacing, any game with a pace fast enough that you can't like that you're not going to stop and chat. I really wonder what the benefit of playing with randoms is mostly.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I come back to these games and like I do remember like I am the weird person who enjoyed pugging dungeons and WoW. I understand this makes me weird.
I mean, I was definitely also this thing once upon a time.
But like a lot of that was, at least in dungeons, like you might meet somebody and you might have a conversation and you might add them to a friends list at the end of it. It didn't happen often, but like sometimes it did. And like the game allowed for that communication to occur because it was a little bit slower. Back when it was a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Eventually that game
Silent
just
Dungeons.
became Silent Dungeons became the way it worked.
I mean, I group with randoms when I played Diablo 3 a lot, and that was another kind of instance where you weren't really communicating with those people very much. But I still think that was superior to having just an AI, just for the variety of the different builds that you saw, the ways that they approached clearing things. I mean, I don't know if it's something that I would always choose, but as long as the game was rewarding me for grouping with those randos, it seemed reasonable.
I can definitely see something like that in Diablo. And honestly, I was just thinking about FF14 in a similar vein. Like even if I don't talk to someone in a FF14 dungeon, which I often don't, occasionally it feels worth it over an AI because like, what is that glamour? Or there's something there that makes it at least more interesting than just an AI.
Yeah.
But I here I sort of have a hard time with like, I don't know that there's either the build diversity or the like visual thing like to really feel like I'm gaining much over an AI.
So last night on a whim, I decided to download and install a game that I had largely written off. So Diablo Immortal was bad. We all know Diablo Immortal was bad. And not too long after Diablo Immortal released, there was another ARPG released that was called Undecember. And that's a horrible name. It's a South Korean ARPG. Don't know what it means. Every time I see the name, I think I should sing like part of Long December, but with Undecember. And like there had been people talking about it. Oh, it's just another pay to win, free to play mobile game. And okay, that was enough to turn me off. But I saw it there on Steam and decided to try it. And one of my friends had left a review and was like, "No, the game's fine. Like, yeah, there are pay to win elements, but like it's a PvE game, and you can shortcut your way if you really want to with money." But it's totally playable without it. So I thought, hey, I would check it out. And then it seemed like the type of game that Grace would also like. And I think you checked it out midday today.
Yeah, I started playing it earlier this afternoon and put a few hours in. And it's fun. I mean, it seems like there's some crafting things happening that are a little bit nonsense. It's definitely got some systems that I am still figuring out, but it feels, I think you said this when you were describing it to me, but it does feel like a interesting blend of some of the aspects of Diablo 3 and some of the aspects of Path of Exile. But importantly for me, I really like that you actually get to choose your character. It's so rare in this style of game to have any options for what your character looks like. And they're not the best options or all that different, but it's nice to.
It's a non-zero choice.
It's a non-zero choice, and it's my class is not gender locked. Like in fact, your class is whatever you feel like making it, which is nice and open ended, and so.
But like the big difference for me between this and Path of Exile is I 100% understand what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I don't need to go in a different direction than I would normally sit down in a game. Like I can play a bow class, and hitting things with a bow is actually valid. Hitting things with a sword is actually valid.
Oh, you don't have to come up with some complicated 3-dimensional chess for it?
I mean, that exists, but it's kind of a kinder, gentler version of spell gems. So like you have abilities and every gem is hex shaped and it has a number of sides. And the sides can be red, green, or blue for dex, int, or strength. And there are different kinds of gems that link things together. So like you can start to get, some of the complexity of a Path of Exile with this hex grid as you're placing gems carefully to connect the dots, so that your buffer gems can, hit multiple gems. I not long ago got a cast on hit ability that's a linker that I can basically make my spread shot now cast a different spell whatever it hits. So like I have taken a spread shot, I have increased the number of projectiles, and every time it hits, the first target it hits causes a cascading chain lightning. So like that's really effective for clear. I don't know if it'll stay effective, but it's fun. And like it didn't take a lot for me to piece that together. And I think Grace went down the minion path and it seems to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've been enjoying the minions, and it's nice when I get a gem that buffs minions. If I can put things in the right place on the hex grid, I can have it buff both of my minion spells instead of just one.
Like, it's less frustrating to have the gems not also have to rely on specific pieces of gear that you need to equip. And I know PoE 2 is going in that direction, but like, yeah, no, this is way better than having to try and figure out what gear you need so that you can have 6 gems together in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's still nonsense to do in terms of like how many colors are on the side of your little gem and where to fit them in the grid. But it's kinder because at least that's not also tied to the whole rest of your gear.
Well, and like the crafting system is basically Path of Exile. Like, there is a version of everything that you can do in Path of Exile. I just got an item that is basically an exalted orb. And it looks almost exactly like an exalted orb. It's got like a red and yellow, or like a blue and yellow faced person on it. So it's just an exalted orb. So like, it is very much aware that Path of Exile exists. But it seems to be way more open-ended. Now, the problem is you can still build yourself into a hole where instead of I have these talent points that I can't respec easily, that costs money to respec, but also I've poured resources into these gems, and now if I want to change out the gems, I'm gonna have to grind out resources to put into the new gem in order to buff it up to the same level that my previous gem was.
Okay.
Because it's very much it is not time spent with the gem levels it. It's gathering up resources in the world that I feed into the gem levels the gem. But it's so far it doesn't seem horrible. Like, it's very easy to go back into a map you've already cleared. I think there's going to be some gold pressure at some point. What?
I feel like this is maybe something that should be just assumed, but what's the theme of this game?
I don't know.
The story is not great.
I mean, it's a KMMO. Like, I don't know. It's got some fancy, pretty people, and there's some kind of demony things that are attacking.
Okay, so we're still swords and sorcery.
Yeah, still swords and sorcery. Like, with, I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's any actual tech, but it feels like it could be almost a Magitech Society kind of thing.
It's mostly swords and sorcery so far, anyway.
Are there games like this that are not swords and sorcery?
Space Punks is the only one I can think of, and I didn't really love Space Punks.
I mean, the Torchlight franchise definitely has a bit more on the Magitech side, but it's not like full on sci-fi or anything.
Yeah, okay.
I can't think of any successful ones. The cash shop is kind of expensive. Like, that's a strike against it. Upgrading your bank storage is really expensive. It's more expensive than Path of Exile was.
But so far, I'm level 20 or something, and I haven't felt any pressure for that yet, which is nice because there are definitely games like this where you're level 5 and your bags are full and you're annoyed already.
It's got full mobile support, full PC support. You can link the two accounts. It has kind of contorted the process of linking them. I have figured it out, but yeah, it is kind of contorted. Has controller support on both, I believe. I am going to at some point test that the mobile has controller support.
Have you messed with it much on mobile? I have not tried it on mobile yet.
I installed it and got the accounts linked, and that's as far as I've gotten. It does not have any autoplay functionality, so it is the same game just on a mobile phone. I mean, it seems cool. We were able to, after some fiddling, get into the same area. it is more Diablo than Path of Exile in that aspect because like I didn't level down, so that doesn't seem to be a thing. You could probably carry someone, but it's not like you could really group effectively at disparate levels. I'm not entirely certain what the ramifications of the cash shop are as far as upgrades, but I don't think I've come up against anything that I wasn't seeing drop in the world.
I was a little bit concerned to look at the currency tab and see that it distinguishes between sort of the cash shop currency that you purchase with money and the equivalent identical name and icon currency that you earn through other means in the world. I don't love that. It makes me concerned about the sorts of nonsense that happened in Diablo Immortal.
Right. And I don't know if that's going to be a problem or if we just haven't gotten to that yet.
But at least for now, at the early stages, I mean, again, some kind of nonsense story, but gameplay is fun. Looks actually pretty. I've been enjoying it. Like running around with minions and a bow.
Yeah, I mean, like it's as close to what I would want from a Diablo Path of Exile hybrid as I can think of off the top of my head. It's just gonna, I guess the real whether or not it's a good option is what the end game feels like and whether or not it's actually meaningful to group with other people.
And whether it's going to end up forcing you to dip into the cash shop.
Yeah.
That was one kind of glorious thing about Path of Exile, that like the cash shop was kind of expensive, but also everything else about the game was good, and I didn't mind giving them some money in the cash shop. This cash shop feels more expensive, and it definitely has a little bit of pay to win options compared to Path of Exile, so not sure how I feel about that.
It feels way more stereotypical mobile gamey
Mhm.
than because like everything has like there's 30 million exclamation points that pop up and things that you have to claim in different tabs, and yeah, no, like it very much feels very mobile-ish. But so far it's not like mechanically it's an enjoyable game. So
Oh, the other thing I do enjoy about it is it does have torchlight style pets that will run around and pick stuff up off the ground for you.
yeah, but there's a catch.
Yeah.
There's a catch.
Yeah, you are leasing the ability to have that. So if you want to keep that functionality forever, you're basically going to have to spend the earnable currency to keep buying 7-day passes for your pet. That's one of the things that feels real shady.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I've already got enough of this fake cash shop currency to buy a couple of these, I think, but it just feels bad. I hate timers on things like that. It is very KMMO. The renting mouths and renting pets and the outfits are real expensive. Like there's 4 slots essentially. There's head and body and a main hand and an offhand weapon. And I think all told to buy a full outfit would be $40 for a skin.
Oof.
Yeah. I mean, like each individual slot is
Yike.
$10. So yeah, like it's real proud of its skins. Thankfully the gear looks pretty cool by itself, but I guess we will see. Like it's fun so far. Like it feels a lot like a Demon Hunter the way I'm playing it.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna keep messing around with it for a while until I hit some kind of cash shop wall or something stupid that makes me bounce. But for now, it's pretty fun.
It's called Undecember?
Undecember.
Yeah.
Yes.
Weird.
What,
All right.
I don't know what it means. Like, I don't know if Korean, that means something.
Definitely isn't like something important that's come up in the game so far
No,
after
and
20
it's not
levels.
Christmas time. So maybe that's because it's not Christmas time in game. It's Undecember. Yeah, it's bizarre. Anyway, but like it's I was just thankful that I could create a character and I didn't have gender locked classes and I could have a beard. Like it hit a lot of marks for me for as far as a KMMO goes.
I mean, I wasn't super excited that most of the facial options for the female character look like they're about 12, but I found something that I could mostly make work.
I definitely went with the single old man out face. So I also hear you've been ranching some slimes.
I have been ranching some slimes. I don't know if I talked about it a ton on the show, but I love the original Slime Rancher. It's something that I have continued to dip back into every once in a while as just a, I don't know, burst of sugar sweetness when I need it. And just very chill exploration and branching slimes.
What is Slime Rancher? Because I have seen this, but I don't know what it actually is.
So it is part sort of farm sim and part exploration. And yeah, you play Beatrix LeBeau, and she is exploring the far, far range where she sucks up slimes with a vac gun and then shoots them back into pens on her ranch so she can ranch the slimes. Um, and so you have to sort of explore the world to find new slimes and sort of figure out what they eat and find that. And there's ways that the slimes can combine with each other a little bit. And you can optimize some things about the way you ranch them if you combine them in different ways. But if you combine them too much, they turn into things called tar, and those are angry, and you have to shoot them with water to disperse them and get rid of them. But yeah, so the first one, you sort of explore this world, and there's some puzzle type things to solve, and it's not an overly complicated game, but it's just very sweet, very cute, for the most part, very chill, and just yeah. So it's just a good time. And so Slime Rancher 2 is now out for early access, and I love it. I put a bunch of hours into it already. It honestly, so a little bit mixed feelings when you have a game that's a sequel that feels so much like the original that it's hard to tell them apart. But at the same time, I love the original Slime Rancher, and this is just giving me more of that with new slimes and new places to explore. So I can't really complain about it. But yeah, I don't know. I like running around this really pretty rainbow colored world with these happy little slimes with their little weird faces and like bouncing around making adorable noises. And then you suck them up into a vacuum gun and shoot them off into the sea. But yeah, so far I've explored maybe parts of 2 different areas in the world and haven't found a whole lot that's really mechanically different from the first one. Definitely some new slimes, but it's more of what I love from the original. And I haven't also, for something that's early access, at least the parts that I have been through so far do not feel early access. It feels just as complete as the original game in these areas. So I'm not sure what, if there's just more areas that haven't been added yet and I haven't found that yet or what, but it feels like a pretty complete game so far. Because that's always something with early access that, especially in something where you're building up your farm and like, is this going to get wiped or is this something that's, going to be pointless when they add in a new zone? But at least right now, it doesn't feel like that. So definitely recommend Ranching Slimes.
I really need to play one of those games at some point.
Yeah, I mean, recommend starting with the first one just because it's going to be cheaper and lets you see the world, and there is a little bit of continuation of story, so I think it's not a bad thing to play them both, especially if you're just not sure about it. If the first one's cheaper and more complete, it will give you a easier idea of if you will like it or not. But really, I mean, if you look at the art for either of those games, like it's just hard to not love their adorable, stupid little squishy slime faces.
So I have been involved in some nonsense in since the migration to Mastodon. I have kicked around the idea of starting an instance many times, and while everyone that I've talked about that idea has told me not to do it,
Yes.
I'm not, but I have some friends that are. So some of my Canadian friends are fixing to launch mstdn.games, which should be live tomorrow by the time people actually listen to this podcast. It is most technically live right now, but the signups are by authorization only currently.
Bell,
Yes,
you're in no way going to be tech support for this, are you?
I am one of the moderators.
Bell.
Yes, I know. I know.
I'm
I've already done this
shocked.
several times before. Like I did
Shocked.
this for Lior's instance. I did this for the MMO games instance. But yeah. So one of the things that we had all kind of noticed is there wasn't really a great games themed instance. Like Alec claims to be, but it wasn't really. So they all thought that this was a niche that should exist, and um, I kind of got involved in the process and recruited to the thing. So I will be once again migrating, but yeah. So by the time this show goes out, that will be an option. It is a smaller instance. They have Patreon set up, hopefully to sustain it. We will see how this goes. But it will be like one of the things that I liked about 90s Cafe or MMORPG.social is the local feed felt kind of small and close knit. And one of the problems with being on one of the big instances is the local feed is mostly nonsense. And there's a lot of really good game developer instances, but there's not a lot of just games instances. And I think the only one still is Alec.xyz. And over the years, that has not really been much of a gaming instance. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know how big it will get. It is on real servers. It should be able to be scaled as needed.
Well, good luck, Bell.
I know. And the thing is like there are 4 mods, so it's not just me. We're already in better shape than mastodon.social, who is a massive instance and only has a single moderator.
That's my instance.
Yes, your instance.
I'm the
It-
problem.
It and mastodon.online are largely unmoderated. They have a single moderator, I think. So yeah, it's we hope to do a better job of moderating than that. Also, while on the theme of shenanigans, apparently we're no longer on Themiscyra in New World. I don't have a lot to say about that, but we were merged, so it seems to have gone successfully.
Yay.
It's a much larger server. So yeah, that's a thing.
The server is dead. Long live the server.
The server is dead. Long live the server. Yep. We were a small server merging into a bigger server, so nobody on the server got to keep any of their territory. But we're refunded a bunch of money. So I had made friends with some people in a different faction that ran Everfall, and it's kind of sad to see them go because they were decent people. But, in theory, they might be able to get it back at some point. I don't know.
I imagine the politics around that are going to be super annoying.
Well, it always is.
This game does seem like it should have just delightfully annoying politics.
Oh, it is, absolutely. And one of the things that cracked me up is like I started doing invasions this week just because I figured it was probably time for me to do invasions. And there's been enough movement and enough confusion as to who to use what Discord for what thing that there's just now an invasions Discord for all of New World.
Oh, for all of it?
You go in and you say what server you're on, and it unhides a bunch of channels just for your server, and it's basically neutral ground. Like, that was always the problem when it came to defending invasions or anything like that, was like, whose Discord do you use? Do you invite people from the other faction into your Discord? And I remember that being a massive mess. And now it's just, there's a community resource Discord for invasions. Everybody just uses that. It's fine. So they're a lot more smooth than they used to be. We were 26 seconds away from winning, but we were like two squads down.
Invasions are the PvE thing?
Yes, they're the big PvE thing where 8 waves of corrupted, and each wave has like, I don't know, 10 sub waves or something like that, where they attack your fort and you have to defend them off. And if anybody ever gets into the middle, it's pretty much over. So like you have to be perfect or it's over. Because if like one of the big boss types gets into the middle, it can break the central pillar just in moments. And that's basically what happened to us, is like we were 26 seconds away and we just had bad RNG, got too many nasty things all at once, and it broke a gate, and then they got inside, and then it was just over. So I am curious about this screenshots and photo mode topic.
I mean, so like photo mode is a new thing. And by new, I mean in the last decade. And I got to admit, I never got it. Like, I don't take screenshots that much. I never really, I just never really cared. But what I found really interesting is this, when I first saw photo mode be a thing in games, I was like, that seems like a ton of effort to build a feature. Like, that's a complicated feature to build that, I wonder, like, how worth it is it?
It seems like it would be really worth it because it's basically free advertising, because people share pretty pictures of your game all over the place.
I mean, it's true, but people did that already. You're enabling it more than before. But the people who are gonna put together just like incredible photos, like incredible screenshots, were gonna do that anyway. And so the photo mode thing I never really got. And like, why would you have like these detailed controls with all kinds of functionality for it? And it came up when we were talking about Fallout 76, where like that's the game that finally was like, oh, this game has a really, really cool photo mode implementation.
Yes.
Because like I now have a reason to take screenshots. And I don't need to do anything to make it cool. But and it makes like every time I'm playing the game, it makes it feel super personalized. It reminds me of cool stuff that I've done. I think the other game that was so effective at making me care about screenshots was FF15, which I think was brilliant. It was brilliant, but it wasn't active. Like I had a bunch of photos, and it was cool that they were there, and eventually I cared, but it wasn't something I was actively doing very much of. What I think is really cool, but now I've been playing it in a bunch of different games. There's regular screenshot contests in Star Citizen. Ghost of Tsushima has just an incredibly detailed series of controls for photo modes. And it's just interesting to me. It's interesting seeing this avenue of games where it's like it's really just video game photography taken to an extreme and then layered into the game features themselves. And it's been around for a while, but I'm really enjoying this sort of, I don't know, leaning into it more. And like the thing that I noticed that had changed about myself is I'm now annoyed when I play a game that doesn't have like I'm like, I want to take a screenshot. Oh, but it doesn't have a good way for me to do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is also why I run a third party screenshot utility like ShareX so that I never have to run into that problem. Because, like,
So
my use case for screenshots is probably different than most people because I use them to document posts that I'm writing. So I want pictures to go along with it. So I am constantly hitting the screenshot button. And I just want them to be quick and easy so that I can go on back to whatever I was doing while I'm playing a game.
I will say one of the things like why I think it's interesting in Fallout 76 is how often they will like remind you of your screenshots, and especially for like and Fallout 76 was good about this because they very much like in-game encouraged you to take photos, and I think like an important thing is to try and have the game do a little bit better job of nudging players to take photos and then show player those photos later on. Like put those games like in put those photos in the game somehow so players feel rewarded for taking the photos rather than them ending up in a folder that a player never looks at.
Yeah. Yes. Like that's the thing that really made it click for me in Fallout 76 and FF15. And it's a thing that I find myself frustrated with in Star Citizen, where that game is just absolutely incredible for screenshots and just like incredible photos, but like it's just not as slick.
And it should absolutely be showing you those screenshots because yes, they are super cool, and it should figure out how to be like, yes, I remember this screenshot, let me show this.
Yeah. And like it's a little weird because the game doesn't have like load screens, but honestly there's enough visual monitors, and you could have a decoration on a ship that filters through your your photos, and you have this like nice diegetic thing.
And I'm fine with that existing, but I also want them to actually save off a file somewhere that I can access.
Oh yeah,
because that was the problem
Sure.
that I had with Final Fantasy 15 is you could go look at the photos through the reel, but like they didn't actually save those screenshots unless you then took an additional step to save the screenshots.
yeah, which is why I think Fallout 76 did it better, where it would save the screenshot and then also draw, and then also like I don't know if it made a copy of or just drew from its screenshots folder for your load screens.
Yeah, it's just a folder on the hard drive.
I think photo modes can be very amazing, and I feel the same way. Now I'm upset when a game that I really want to have one doesn't have it. And I like how like Final Fantasy 14 has their group photo and how they keep adding different cute things that you can do with it, like, lock the time of day when you start taking a photo, or you can remove people that aren't in your party that you don't want to photograph and stuff like that. I love the options like that. And I love that more games are starting to do stuff like that. Like I spent a lot of time in Ghost of Tsushima taking screenshots and just playing with all the options because there was so many cool things you could do with it.
Oh yeah, you can take like Ghost of Tsushima has, and Horizon Zero Dawn is the other one
Yes.
that both have just incredible screenshot tools.
What I really want is, and I think we talked about this last time this topic came up, is the ability to like go back and kind of virtually replay the events of the night and take screenshots at will. Because like my problem is like I don't want to stop in the middle of playing to go into photo mode.
Yes.
But I maybe want to go back like 30 minutes at the end of the night and save off some cool images of what we did.
I wonder if there's a way to do that that doesn't just absolutely trash your hard drive.
I don't know. That's the problem. Like, when we were talking about last time, is you would almost have to have something like the demo technology that they used to have with early video games, where it just recorded a playthrough of the game and saved off just the data. But like, there's so many objects now that it would be massive files. Because what you almost want is kind of like when you can throw a video game in benchmark mode and it's just executing a sequence of things that were pre-saved.
Yeah. Now I'm like, I wonder what it would take to be able, because a lot of that is there's a lot of like setting up the photo that you would do if you were actually taking like a photo mode screenshot. But like, what if you could save your play session and then like pause play in the middle of like a cool moment, then set up your photo.
Yeah, that's what I want. Is I basically want brain dance mode from Cyberpunk 2077, but with what I just did for the night, where I can go in and move around the actions that just played out, take interesting screenshots wherever I want to. Because like brain dance is a really cool concept in Cyberpunk 2077. It's sketchy as hell, but like something like that as a photo mode.
I'm imagining like a 300 gigabyte cache file.
Oh.
Like that's what that conjures up in my brain. Because I mean, even running like, because I've got an NVIDIA card, and there's a app as part of the NVIDIA suite that just you could basically have it be like always recording, and it'll save the last like however long you tell it of your
Right.
gameplay, and that's just as a video, and it's huge.
Right, it's thrashing your hard drive.
But there are definitely moments where like 5 or 10 minutes after the fact, I'm like, wow, I wish I could have captured that in a cool screenshot.
Well, like imagine what it would do for raid fights if you could, after the fight, instead of just replaying the logs, go into spectator mode and watch your last attempt and fly around and do whatever you want and see where our positioning was off and stuff like that.
Congratulations, you just turned me off of the concept.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Can you imagine having to watch, like, in order to join a raid group, like, here, you need to watch these 30 videos. Every time we do a run, now you must watch a video of the previous run to improve.
I'm not saying I'd ever want to use it for that, because, like, I didn't even like watching videos before fights.
I know, it's why we're not good raiders anymore.
It's also a great way to have people come back at you and blame you for any minor mistakes.
You were off a pixel here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which kind of makes our way into the next topic of why it's rude to suck at Warcraft.
Man, I definitely felt so. Why it's rude to suck at Warcraft is a video by Dan Olson about
of the person who did the for reference, if you're not familiar with the name, this is the Folding Ideas people who did the very good, very long NFTs breakdown.
And also the Flat Earth video.
Yeah.
Basically on how Warcraft and how information about Warcraft and winning at Warcraft introduced social requirements to people who were playing at Warcraft, and there became an etiquette, and a violation of the etiquette is to be bad at Warcraft, and just creating an incredibly toxic environment for basically anyone who isn't like at trying to like optimizing everything perfectly.
Well, I mean, the same's true kind of in like Final Fantasy 14. If you didn't learn the content on week 1, anyone coming in on week 2 trying to do party finder clears is going to struggle because nobody wants to teach anyone how to do the thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that almost any competitive environment or like co-op with goals environment is prone to this.
Well, and also it's interesting because it's not, what was fascinating to me is it's not just because people are upset about failure, because if that were the case, then the people who were focused on optimization, like, they'd still win. It's just they don't win fast enough, and they find that infuriating. And so, like, it becomes like there's a social language to all of this. This actually gets back to the silent dungeons that you talked about. Like, everyone has to know what is the agreed upon way of doing these dungeons. And like, if you silently try and do something else, or if you like try and communicate, hey, let's try something else, that's too inefficient, and people get upset and just kick you.
Well, and I've seen this sequence play out where folks complain that nobody's putting in the quote unquote needed effort to learn this content, but then also complain that nobody's queuing for the content.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't make new people who know the content unless you're willing to help teach them the content.
I will say in Final Fantasy XIV's case, for the most part, if people come into a raid or dungeon and say, hey, I'm new here, they're more likely to get people willing to explain things and help out than other games that I've noticed. So people just have to speak up in most cases.
I also think Final Fantasy is a little bit better just because they have specific systems to try and bribe players to help others, which is smart.
Yeah.
You should always have that. Everyone should have that.
Yeah, I specifically was talking about conversations I've had with friends about the Party Finder Savage groups.
Oh, that sounds miserable.
I would never want a Party Finder or something like that.
It's definitely a different environment. I've done a little bit of that. And yeah, if someone comes in and says, I'm new here, you get maybe 50-50, like, people who are trying to still have that Final Fantasy helpfulness, and the other 50 who are just like, nope, I'm just dropping group now.
Yeah, at dungeons, Final Fantasy is a great experience. Like in low pressure environments like a dungeon, yeah, people are willing to like handhold, and I've stood and waited for 15-20 minutes while somebody had to go do something else to return. Like, that is not uncommon. It's just like at the competitive end of the game.
Yeah,
I think the walls break down even in Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking so much about like the Savage stuff, but even like the EXs, they have learning parties and stuff. So I feel they try sometimes. But yeah, doing Savage stuff and Party Finder just not. No.
Yeah, but even in the clear parties, like if you go into the clear parties and someone doesn't know what they're doing, which always happens. Like it will be hell. People will just leave. But yeah, like it's weird that there's an expected research curve that you're supposed to do before you even set foot.
Well, and it's also, a lot of it is just how much information that we give players. This is back to that, I'd like to be able to fly through. And a lot of it is like, I have been on this too, and this is definitely a video I watched, and it was like, I need to rethink things about like what I want. Because I'm very much on the like, if a boss kills me because like I wasn't doing enough DPS, I want to know like what happened there. Like why was what I was doing insufficient? But maybe I shouldn't know that, because as soon as you introduce DPS meters, like the social pressure to monitor everyone else just becomes so overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's fine if we don't know why we win or lose.
There's this there's this arc to, do you know, did you, there's this arc, but there's this like middle ground between, do you have excruciating detail and did you learn nothing? Like,
Yeah.
and boy, that's a hard place to hit.
Well, because the same was true when we were talking about Path of Exile, where there were so many times I died at high end and I had no clue why.
Oh yeah.
I just didn't have the knowledge yet to be able to interpret why I just died. So I just kept dying over and over until I ran out of my 6 attempts and we're done. And that's bad. Like you need to know what you're doing wrong, but also maybe not everyone else needs to know what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
But as soon as you know what you're doing wrong, people can pressure you to tell them.
Yes.
It's like absolutely miserable. Like if I have something telling me why I failed, I will have somebody asking me, what is that log saying, telling you?
Yeah, share the log. And to some extent, this is why one of my favorite things to do is to do like FF14 dungeons completely blind, where nobody has any idea.
Yeah.
Because you get this
Yep.
really unique experience where everyone is figuring things out all at the same time.
Yep.
And you get like one chance to capture it. Like this is why I have sat sometimes for weeks before doing a piece of content, waiting for enough other people to have caught up that we could all do it together, because like it's so rare and precious for me to capture that unique experience that I'm willing to wait. But it's so hard to do.
Well, I mean, the problem is not everybody cares about that aspect and is willing to wait around. Because like I don't care about first time syndrome. Like it's not that big of a deal for me. I want to beat the content and get the gear more than I care about savoring the fight itself. But like I know it is a thing that you greatly enjoy, and I would rather go in blind if it's an option. But like there's eventually a time where I'm going to dive in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of in the middle ground. I really love being able to do things, with a group of friends, blind, but also I'm not going to sit around for more than a day or two waiting for that. So if I happen to catch an opportunity for it, I'm super excited about it. But also, I want to just continue with the story or keep moving forward with the game. So have to find a balance. And even if I can do it blind with one other person and a couple randoms, that's sometimes close enough. The biggest problem is when I have to do content by myself with randoms, then I feel like I have to look it up ahead of time. So I'm not just a liability, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of prime example is what I'm going through right now with New World, where I kind of had these hopes that maybe we would have a full group of 60s and be able to roam around and do the big open world content. It's really fun, but like I'm kind of miserable in giving up on that notion, and just gonna go find random people and do stuff with.
I mean, I still on these new characters, I don't think I've done just the first dungeon.
Yeah, because it's only been you and I on, or it's only been me and Vernie on, or it's only been so like we've never had a full group of people. Like we've had 2 people, and we've tried to do some stuff with them, and like there's a limit to what you do need bodies at some point, but yeah, I've started engaging more with the community to fill in that gap. Whereas I can't wait forever, or I'm gonna lose interest in the game.
I mean, I think part of my problem is that I'm not actually on in the right time zones for
Yeah.
anyone else.
Yeah.
So I mostly play that game solo, which is fine. It's a pretty good solo game experience.
Yeah, I have the sort of I'm sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum where like the second time I run a thing, I'm already bored.
Yeah. Whereas when I was writing my guides, there's some of those bosses I farmed for 6 hours straight without leaving.
Yeah, like
and I was happy as a clam, waiting for the next drop.
Like the thing that finally drove me out of FF14 was I have to run this dungeon more than once all the time. I just don't want to do it.
I mean, that was the dilemma back in vanilla, is, the pressure of those who didn't want to run dungeons anymore, or didn't want to run raids anymore, and those who wanted to get their gear. Like, they got everyone
Oh,
else's
yeah.
gear. Like, why won't you come get my gear? I never got the gear.
Yeah.
And it sucks, like especially in that scenario where only one of the 3 raids was good for anyone, and it was different for every person. I am glad that they have basically moved to a situation where most gear is just numerically better than the last tier.
I actually don't like that, but I think that the distribution method was bad. Like I feel like gear is boring to me now because it's just like there's no interesting choices in gear anymore. There stopped being interesting choices in gear like 2012. So like
wow, that's generous.
I'm not making any interesting choices when I select a new piece of gear for the most part. I'm finding the one that has the biggest numbers of the numbers that I like. And that's usually the one that comes from the place that gives the gear with the biggest numbers. So there's no real thought to it. But I do think that this piece of gear only drops in one particular location and you can't get it any other way. And therefore you have to do this thing until randomness favors you is miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think we moved to a really cool place with basically tokenized rewards, which is less exciting than getting a sweet drop and equipping it right there. But I think that's a trade-off that's good for everyone.
See, I think both can exist where you have a thing drops and it's cool when it drops, but also there's a pity system that if you're grinding long enough, you're going to get the thing that allows you to get the item.
Yeah.
Like a mark of each boss.
Yeah. I mean, like that, those systems are great, but the problem with Valor points or whatever other currency is there were things on the drop table that you just couldn't purchase. Like, I am of the firm belief, and there's basically 2 camps that have evolved out of MMO reward, where the best gear should require the hardest work. And if you don't do the hardest work, you should never get the best gear. And there's the camp that I live in that everything should be earnable in time. Like, there should be a way to get everything.
Yeah.
If you put in enough time, enough alternate effort, like, you should be able to get the thing that you want.
Yeah, and it's not just about like if you do the hardest raid content enough, eventually the thing you want will drop. It's more having alternate options to the hardest raid content that will also eventually let you get the thing.
Exactly. Like, if I want to craft my way there, sweet. Let's craft our way there.
It boils down to these games appeal to a wide variety of people in a wide variety of different ways. Forcing people to do things that are not the reason that they're playing the game is encouraging is good, forcing is bad. Because what people will do is say, I don't want to do that, but if I want to keep on going, I have to. So I guess I'm going to log out and never log back in.
Right.
Like the fact that there is nothing that I can, not to beat a dead horse, but the fact that there is nothing that I can do in FF14 casually on my own without social pressure in some form has completely burned me out of that game at this point. I just don't want to do it. Once I finish the story and hit max level, I log out and I'm done.
Well, and to some extent, I'm kind of in the same boat, but it's for different reasons. I gobble up all the story and then there's nothing that I really want to do because I'm not ever going to raid. So what am I doing there in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, that game suffers from nothing in the world ever happens that's interesting.
Yeah. The world is... I mean, I disagree with Metzen on a lot of things, but the world is the most interesting character in World of Warcraft is kind of a true thing.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
The world of Final Fantasy XIV could be a little more interesting.
At least in ways that you can experience. Like, I think the world of Final Fantasy XIV is actually very interesting. It's just not in a way that you can experience organically. It's like sort of the opposite of Fallout. Like Fallout games, like Bethesda games in general, the worlds can be really interesting. And I think of Fallout because Fallout has some really interesting story stuff that's like revealed from you wandering around the environment, getting lost, seeing things that you wouldn't have before, and looking around corners and just going places. Versus Final Fantasy, where all of the interesting stuff in the story is the main quest line and things that are explicitly quests that you have absolutely no reason to do as soon as you hit max level.
I mean, I think that's why I've stuck around in New World so long, is that the moment-to-moment gameplay is what I find enjoyable, and it doesn't necessarily matter what I'm doing. I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. So, like, there's been a hook to keep me there.
Yeah.
That's also kind of why I play so many ARPGs, is I find them interesting mechanically. I don't know. It is definitely an interesting video that I would highly suggest that you watch if you have 2 hours. I think it was 2 hours long.
Something like that.
I guess we'll blitz one real quick thing so that we don't have to talk about it next week. Blizzard's done in China.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
what's that mean?
So,
Blizzard no longer has a partner for China.
Yeah. So something went very badly between Blizzard and NetEase, right?
Yeah, it was NetEase.
I guess little business in China primer. You cannot, as a foreign company, you cannot do business in China directly. You have to go through a Chinese intermediary. It's illegal not to do so. So if you lose your Chinese intermediary, you can't do business in that country. And as of January, so a month and change from now, Blizzard, the only Blizzard game that will be active in China is Diablo Immortal.
Is that
the
because
way
that's through a third party?
There's something about the specific way that contract was written,
Yeah,
that it can continue to function.
yeah, but everything else is done, and it's a thing that is easy to write off, but it is having very weird ripple effects in a bunch of other places.
Yeah, I think everyone that has a Chinese intermediary is now concerned it's going to happen to them.
Right. While also getting huge influxes of users from Chinese WoW players who are already having exoduses to other games. Which the other kind of interesting struggle here is that, like, WoW just launched an expansion, and also it is not trivial to set up one of these agreements with intermediaries. Like, it takes years usually. So like, this lapsing and ending is not like a WoW goes dark for a month or 6 months or whatever. It's like WoW probably isn't coming back to China while it's still relevant.
Yeah.
And WoW has more players in China than North America had.
By a large margin.
By what?
By a large margin.
Yeah, by a significant margin.
Yeah, so it's going to be wild to watch this play out.
Yike.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, I think we are well over time. Any final thoughts? Well, hopefully you enjoyed this show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.